Hello, boys and girls. Today we are going to work on lessons 2.5 and 2.6, which is the distributive property and expanded form. The distributive property is multiplying the sum of a number is the same as multiplying each addend by the number, then adding the products. Please pause the video and copy this definition down. So below, we are just going to use this grid for this problem only. From here on out, you will draw your own boxes and you do not need a grid for this. So first we're going to outline a grid that is 6 by 13. 6 by 13. Now we're going to think of 13 as 5 plus 8. Because if I add 5 and 8 together, then I will be able to then that will equal 13. So now I need to take this 13 pieces and divide them by 5 and 8 pieces. And this is still 6 pieces. So we're going to shade the smaller ones. So here we go. We have this is one color. And we'll shade this set this color. And now we're going to use the distributive property to find the product of what each smaller rectangle represents. Then we're going to find the sum of the products. So 5 times 6 is 30. Then we're doing 6 times 8 is 48. Now we're going to add these two products together. So 48 plus 30 is 78. 78 is 6 times 13. All we did was we broke apart the 13 and made it into two numbers that we know how to multiply together off the top of our heads. We know that 6 times 5 is 30 and 6 times 8 is 48. And when I add those two numbers together, I get 78. Again, that is the product for 6 times 13. So I can do this again. And I can think of 13 as a different sum. It does not matter how you break apart 13. You can break apart 13 several different ways. You could break it apart 13 as 10 and 3. You could break it apart as 11 and 2. You could break it apart as 7 and 6. You can choose to break it apart into any two numbers that you choose to break it apart into as long as they equal 13. Because 10 plus 3 is 13, 11 plus 2 is 13, 7 plus 6 is 13. So if you don't know what 7 times 6 is, then you will not break it apart into 7 and 6. If you don't know what 6 times 11 is, you won't break it apart into this. If you know what 6 times 10 is, that would be a great thing to break it apart. So we're going to break it apart into 6 times 10 plus 3. So 6 times 10 is equal to 60. 6 times 3 is equal to 18. 60 plus 18, again, is 78. So as you can see, it does not matter how you choose to break it apart. As long as the sum of the two numbers you break apart, 13 apart into, equal 13, you will get the same exact answer. You can also draw your box. You do not need a grid. And I can draw it like this. This represents 3. This represents 10, and again, this whole thing represents 6. So 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 10 is 60. And then we add these two numbers together. Now, expanded form is the same as using the distributive property. So if you hear someone say use expanded form and the distributive property, they are the same method. But right now, we are going to learn to write out the equations. This is very important. So now let's try it with a bigger number. We have 5 times 143. So I'm going to break apart 143, and I'm going to write it in expanded form. And we learned expanded form last chapter. So 143 breaks apart into one set of 100, 4 tens, and 3 ones, which would be 100 plus 40 plus 3. Now I have to write it out using the distributive property. Because I'm distributing that 5 into that 100, I'm going to distribute it into the 40, and then I'm going to distribute it to the 3. So we have 5 times 100, we have 5 times 40, and then we have 5 times 3. So now I'm going to do 5 times 100 is 500, plus 5 times 40, well 5 times 2 is 20 with one additional 0, plus 5 times 3 is 15. And then I will add these together. 500 plus 200 is 700, plus 15 is 715. So 5 times 143 is equal to 700. And here we go. This is where we can look at it with a model. So if you choose to create the model, you may choose to create the model, but you must also be able to write it out using the equation. So let's try this. So we've broken the model apart, and as you can see, you do not need a grid for this. So we have 5 times 100, 5 times 40, and 5 times 3. And I like to write in here 5 times 100, 500, 5 times 40, 200, and 5 times 3 is 15. So again, you can see how we wrote out. You multiply your hundreds first, then you're multiplying your tens. Then you'll go ahead and you'll multiply the ones. So this 5 times 100 is 500. 5 times 40 is 200. And we'll come back over to here and we see 5 times 3 is 15. So then you add your products together for 715. So 5 times 3, 143 is 715. So when you are done, this is what you must have on your paper, all of this information. You must have written out 5 times 100 plus 5 times 40 plus 5 times 3. Then you must also write the products to each one of these multiplications, and then you must add them together with your final answer. So, here is an example 2. It is your turn to try. So pause this video and try this problem. The gift shop is at the animal park orders 3 boxes of toy animals. Each box has 1,250 toy animals. How many toy animals does the shop order? So we are going to write 1,250 in expanded form. Then we're going to use the distributive property to multiply all of those pieces by 3. So we're going to look at the thousands place, the hundreds place, the tens place, and the ones place. And then we're going to multiply each of those by 3. So I can break apart 1,250 by 1,250. Since I have nothing in my ones place, I do not need to add add 0 to this. So now I have 3 times 1,000, 3 times 200, and 3 times 50. So I look now, 3 times 1,000 is 3,000. 3 times 200, that's 3 times 2 is 6. I have 2 zeros. That becomes 600. Plus 3 times 50, 3 times 5 is 15 with 1 zero, 150. I will now add these together as 3,000, 600, and 150. So the shop ordered 3,750 animals. If you got the answer correct, congratulations. If you did not, please be sure to copy down the proper way to do this problem with the correct answer. Now it is your turn to try another one. 5 times 315. Please pause this video and try to multiply 5 times 315 using expanded form in the distributive property. Okay, let's see how you did. So I'm going to break apart 315 is equal to 300 plus 10 plus 5. So we have to do 5 times 300 plus 5 times 10 plus 5 times 15. Oh, I'm sorry, 5 times 5. 5 times 300, well, 5 times 3 is 15 with 2 additional zeros. Plus 5 times 10 is 50. Plus 5 times 5 is 25. And now I will add all of these together. So your answer, the product of 5 times 315 is 1,575. Good luck.